have that same call from yesterday. Stay awake. And this image here of making sure that we have oil to keep our lamp burning is such an important one. It's actually the image that we receive in baptism. We receive a candle, and then the priest, the deacon, says to the parents and godparents, be sure to help to keep this light burning. So there's this call of our whole life is like that candle. We need to always make sure that the candles that they had back then they were more oil lamps, oil candles. And so you would fill them. You'd have to make sure you had extra stores, or else that oil would go out. And in the desert, it is very, very dark. So, what are ways in which we maybe don't have that oil? It starts with just cutting corners in little ways. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. Here's just an experience just from sort of an earthly situation of maybe getting to bed on time. The virtue of getting to bed on time, and the virtue of getting up on time. Maybe to get to work, maybe to have a good breakfast, maybe to have prayer in the morning. And have you ever had that experience where there's just a little temptation? This happens to me all the time, so I'm preaching to myself. But it's sort of like, well, I'm going to just check one more thing on the internet. Or I'm just going to write one more message. Or look at one more email. Or sometimes it might be, even something as good as reading, but it's like, I need one more page, and one more page, and one more page, and all of a sudden 2 hours go by, and it's late, and then it's harder to get up. But have you ever noticed how if you do that over and over and over again, or even like when you wake up, have the snooze button, and you just get used to doing the snooze maybe one time, and then maybe you do it a second time, and then pretty soon you're just doing so many snooze buttons that you're giving yourself an hour of snooze, and then maybe you're missing something that is really important in your life to set the day right. Maybe that deep prayer in the morning, maybe because of some of these little cutting the corner decisions, you have to kind of rush through prayer. Or maybe rush through your breakfast so that you don't really have that strength and that energy to be able to be that better version of yourself. Sometimes we have those kind of quick foods. I remember when I was going to college, I can't believe I would do this, I would just get 2 Pop-Tarts, like the sprinkles on them. Those things they're like eating cotton candy. But I didn't have time, so I grabbed those and just went out, and that became my breakfast. But after a while, you do that long enough, and you crash, with a sugar crash. You're not able to. I remember just falling asleep all the time in my math course in the beginning of the day, and it was sort of setting the whole day kind of off balance. But it started with some of those little tiny decisions of saying, I'm going to cut the corner, even though I know that I need to do this in order to be able to set up for the rest of the day. We do that on a physical aspect, but also on the spiritual aspect too. Maybe in the way that we enter into prayer, maybe the way in which we maybe cut corners in our care of others. Maybe there might be that sense of, maybe there's like a nudge on the heart to write someone a card. And it's like, well, I'll do it later. Or maybe to call mom and dad, or call a friend or a brother or sister, and it's like, well, maybe I'll do that later. And then maybe a day goes by and a day goes by, and all of a sudden you get more into a habit of not having that same kind of connection as before. We do that in our relationships, but also with God as well. And many times we can kind of just little by little, just etch away the oil stores until all of a sudden we realize, wait a minute, I just feel dry. And if we start tracing our history back, we start realizing that we weren't really filling our oil up with the right kind of things. Or maybe we were using a lower quality of oil. It was just burning up so easily. Versus something that takes us deeper and deeper. And in many ways, that's what St. Augustine struggled with, where he was searching for what would give his heart rest. But little by little, he started to be enticed with all these things out here, and he didn't realize the true oil. He was trying to fill his oil lamp with water, or maybe a watered down oil. It had certain aspects of the truth there, but it wasn't really able to burn because it wasn't the pure thing. And this is what he says in the Confessions, this beautiful poem, where he says, "Late have I loved you, beauty ever ancient, ever new. Late have I loved you. You were within me, but I was outside. And it was there that I searched for you. In my unloveliness, I plunged into the lovely things which you created. You were with me, but I was not with you. Created things kept me from you. Yet if they had not been in you, they would not have been at all. You called, you shouted, and you broke through my deafness. You flashed, you shone, and you dispelled my blindness. You breathed your fragrance on me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you. I have tasted you. Now I hunger and thirst for more. You touched me, and I burned for your peace." That's what he wrote in his conversion. He was searching. He had sort of built these little life practices in his ways of thinking and in his actions that was drawing him further and further away from the oil supply. And he was wondering, why is it that I'm searching for all these things? I'm filling up my oil lamp, but it seems like I'm just burning water. And what he started to realize is that all of these other things, the beauty that he was finding there, was only because of the beauty of the one who is the all-beautiful one. And yet, by searching for these and not going to the source, he was draining and drying himself out. But then once he discovered who he was looking for, even though he didn't realize it at first, but he realized my heart was looking for that oil source. And this is the key thing here as well, is that filling the oil source of our lamp is something that we can't do just by our own power. We can't just sort of make ourselves holy. Jesus Christ says, "Be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect." And he means that. He wants to make us wholly new. He wants to make us from a country cottage. He wants to break down the walls, create hallways, and make a palace for him to live in. But sometimes we might not want necessarily, we might be content with just natural old me. I want just a country cottage. Don't make me a palace, Lord. Don't break these things down. And yet the Lord is like, you don't realize what I have in store for you. You're searching for all the lukewarm oil, but I want to give you the 100%. And this is where St. Augustine says, "You breathed your fragrance on me. I drew in breath, and now I pant for you." Do you see how he was trying to do it on his own steam? All of that sort of false oil is him and his abilities and his strengths and his talents, which were a lot. But he was, in a sense, putting those in instead of allowing the Lord to fill him. And if we do it just on our own steam, one of two things will happen. We will either, if we try to make ourselves perfect, if we try to live out what Christianity really is about, which is God became man in order that men might become God by participation, by sharing in the life, the divine nature of God. If we try to do that on our own steam, we will get discouraged and just fall away, we'll just give up. Or we will keep on doing it, but we'll get grumpy, we'll get unhappy, we'll get resentful, because we're not doing it on his steam, on his oil. But when we do it in him, with him, in him, through him, with him, and in him, then there is this life that comes from the inside. We breathe this fragrance, and then our whole heart is just longing for that oil, which will make the candle keep